All right, so today we're going to be talking about conditioning, and obviously it's one of those topics that a lot of people talk about, but we don't have a very good grasp of what conditioning is in a lot of levels, or people don't give good definitions of it. So today we're going to be talking about what exactly is conditioning, and then we can relate that to how we use training programs to improve it. All right, so let's look at a simple graph here. We have power output in the vertical axis, and we have duration on the horizontal axis. And really, we can look at two different sport scenarios. Okay, the first sport scenario we can look at is what we'd call cyclic sports, and that's anything where there's just constant power output, marathon running, cycling, and endurance sports, swimming, where there's a constant power output throughout the duration of the entire event. And we can see something like this. Okay, so there's always some level of power output throughout the event, and of course it's going to vary slightly over the course, so they might speed up or they might slow down, but there's this constant, unending level of power output throughout the event. Okay? The second scenario is really what we'd call an acyclic sport, and that's where there's a big spike in power output, generally followed by some period of rest or much, much lower power output, and then a big spike again. So we can look at something like a football game where they're going to be going all out, very high levels of power output for 6-10 seconds or whatever it may be, rest interval of 30-40 seconds or whatever it may be, and then they're back at it. Okay? Or something like fighting where you're talking 3 to 5 minute rounds followed by a minute of rest. Okay? Or actually probably a bit lower there. But you're seeing the same sort of work with rest alternating periods. And those are really the two different models of almost any sport. Okay? There's always either some cyclic or acyclic component to the sport. So, in either case, we can define conditioning as the maximum sustainable power output, okay? And we can look at it as a line. Okay? So we'll call this the maximum sustainable power. And really, this is what conditioning is. It's a measure of how much power you can sustain throughout the entire duration. Because there's always some level of power output you can maintain. If you're a marathon runner and you're in terrible shape, you could still walk a marathon or you could slowly jog a marathon. There's always going to be some level of power that you're going to be able to sustain for the duration of the event. And that's what we call the maximum sustainable power. And that's really what conditioning is. Anytime you go above this level for very long, that's where fatigue is going to start to set in. Okay, so let's look at two different athletes here. Let's say one's maximum sustainable power is there. Okay, and the other has a maximum sustainable power of there. Okay, obviously this guy has much better conditioning than this guy. Okay, he's able to sustain a much higher level of power output over the course of the event than this guy. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that this guy is always going to win the fight or win the race. Probably not. Okay, because how well you manage your energy comes into play as well. So let's say this is this guy's maximal sustainable power, and he operates at below that level. Okay. This guy is going to be able to maintain that over the course of the event. Now let's say this guy goes crazy and he has power output there, okay? He can only do that for so long because he's above his maximal sustainable power before he's going to start to gas out. So even though he was sustaining a much, much higher pace than this athlete, he was going to above his maximal sustainable power, and he's going to end up fatiguing and gassing out before this guy. Okay, so there's really two components to it. There's how much power output can you sustain, which we're going to talk about that in the next episode, what dictates that and what determines that. And then there's how well you maintain your energy over the course of the event. Obviously, you want to have the highest maximum sustainable power output possible because that gives you the potential to have a higher work rate and have a greater power output over the course of the event. But then there's also how well you manage your power output, how well you manage your energy production. So those are really the two aspects to it. So to sum it up, we look at the maximum sustainable power as a measure of how much power you can sustain over the course of your event, be it fighting, endurance sports, or any sport in between. There's always some level of power that you can maintain, and that's really the best gauge of conditioning. And then there's also how well you manage your energy. It's really those two factors that are going to define conditioning and, for the most part, define performance. So, real simple, maximum sustainable power equals conditioning, and we'll see you again next time. We'll talk more about what actually determines this line. All right, so for more videos like this, make sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/8WOTV, or of course you can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Joel Jamieson or /8weeksout, and Twitter, same thing, twitter.com/Joel Jamieson. And you'll always find us at 8weeksout, 8weeksout.com, and we'll see you again next time.